Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started with our community of practice. Take it away, Eduardo.
Sounds great. Yay, how excited to start the community of practice after a few months. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eduardo Ortiz, and I work at the Institute for Disability Research, Policy and Practice, IDRPP, here at Utah State University. And together with my colleagues, Mindy Dokos and Holly Ennis-Poe, would like to welcome all of you to another community of practice organized by Multicultural Disability Network and Training, MultNet project, that seeks better understanding of the challenges faced by people with disabilities. The intersectionality of disability and multiple social, economic, geographic, and cultural factors, among others, create complex contexts that needs expanded conversations and learning opportunities, such as this community of practice activity. By the way, as part of multi-network, we have developed other products I invite you to look at, and probably we are going to put it in the chat, the link. Today, we have the privilege to have Tylee Harmon, who is the Executive Director of the Utah Statewide Independent Living Council, USILC, where she works to strengthen and support independent living services across the state. Tylee is also a proud Utah State University alum, Go Aggies, and Cache Valley native. Tylee has spent the past 13 years in disability services, 12 of those in the independent living field, advocating for systems that empower individuals and actually make sense. She'll be diving into the state plan for independent living and the role of the statewide Independent Living Council, USILC, and she promises to keep the acronyms to be at a minimum, but she doesn't guarantee that. I would like to remind you some ground rules and reminders. First, we would like and we appreciate if you introduce briefly in the chat, writing your name, location, and organization and your role. Remember, this webinar activity is here to discuss, not to debate or argue. Also, any discussion should be focused and avoid side-deviated conversations. Keep an open mind and be open to learning something new. Avoid making assumptions. Be respectful of others. Listening is as important as talking. Ask questions to gain understanding and clarity. And keep your mic mute during the presentation. A final reminder is that this community of practice meeting is also recorded. Tylee, the stage is yours.
Thank you for that glowing introduction, Eduardo. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking time to come learn about independent living, USILC, and the Independent Living Network. I did promise that I wasn't going to use a lot of acronyms, but I will slip. So let me get some of those out of the way first. So obviously, IL is Independent Living. USILC stands for the Utah Statewide Independent Living Council, which is a mouthful, which is why we go by USILC. So I have the opportunity to talk to you today a little bit about the history of the independent living movement and as it pertains to what our council does and the services that are provided by independent living. So I'll do, my next one is just a little fun, so you get to know me a little bit. Let me make sure my thing is working. Ah, it is. Okay. So this is me. As Eduardo mentioned, I am a Cache Valley native. I grew up in a family of 7 children, and I'm right there in the middle. We're in order from youngest to oldest in this picture. So I had to develop a zany personality to stand out. So I try to make my presentations just a little bit fun and then hopefully a lot educational. I do talk with my hands a lot, so just if I karate chop the mic, just go with it. Okay, so this is my family in essence. So my husband and I are into competitive barbecue. This is something that we have gotten pretty good at. So this next week, we have the opportunity to go to the Jack Daniels Invitational in Tennessee. So I'm just gearing up for the longest car ride of my life. I am an avid book reader. I collect pretty editions, special editions of books. This is one of my shelves. I'm a self-proclaimed plant lady. This is Dot. She's my favorite. All of my plants have names so that I don't kill them. I read somewhere that if you name your plants, that they'll stay alive for you. So onward and up. Oh, and I forgot my precious little rabbit named Curtis. I don't have any children, so he's the closest thing I've got. My elderly little grumpy rabbit. Okay, so let's dive into it. The Independent Living Network, and I see a couple familiar names, so a lot of you have heard some of this before. But this is how our network functions. And I call it a network because this is a curated group that works towards helping people with disabilities live as independently as possible. So the funding comes through from the Administration on Community Living, which has updated under the current administration to something else. And I don't want to tell you the wrong name. So I'm going to tell you the old one that it was, which is ACL. We have a flow-through agency through our designated state entity, which for the state of Utah is the Department of Workforce Services. And then I put these two things side by side to demonstrate that the SILC, or the council, does not have any governance over independent living centers. We work in partnership with them and just help to inform the network about services that would be helpful. Okay, so a little bit of background on independent living. So the disability rights movement came about after the Vietnam War, when many veterans were returning with obtained disabilities and lasting effects. And obviously, disability has been present throughout our history. If any of you have had the chance to learn from Dr. Matt Woppett, he teaches a class about the history of disability throughout pretty much all time. It was present, but this is when people with disabilities started to be visible in the community. And interestingly enough, Vietnam War vets were, a lot of them, people of power to begin with. So AKA straight white males, or obviously males of color as well. But now, as they've come back, they are part of a, quote, powerless community. So we've got to maintain that dignity and that continuity. People with disabilities were used to very poor treatment from the communities that they are part of, and really not a part of because there were so many barriers in the way. So fortunately, these veterans made it possible for people with disabilities to be a little bit more seen and accommodated. And then we fast forward to the polio epidemic that left many children with disabilities that still needed to attend school and access the community. And one of those individuals with post-polio syndrome happened to be Justin Dart, who is credited with being the godfather of the ADA. Justin Dart was the son of a senator, and so he came along a little bit later in the independent living movement, but he was able to push their voices to a platform where they were going to be heard a little bit more. He was himself a wheelchair user, and he did visits in every state multiple times when they were trying to pass the ADA, to gather stories and share information with other wheelchair users across the United States. these two other people pictured here are other pioneers in independent living. So Ed Roberts is credited with starting the independent living movement. So he was denied a high school diploma because he was unable to complete his physical education requirement, which is interesting because Ed Roberts used a wheelchair and a ventilator, and there were no accommodations to make sure that the PE class that he needed to graduate was accessible to him or modified in a way that he could participate. He later went on to graduate the University of California and started the first independent living center in Berkeley. And then this is Judy Heumann. She's also another pioneer in the independent living movement. And her story is kind of cool. So she went to school to be a teacher and really she had a great family that just, her disability was just part of their day. And so she went on through all of these, through college and schools, with her parents obviously advocating for her here and there so she could attend with her peers. And she wasn't getting teaching jobs because these schools were seeing her as somebody that would be a fire risk or an emergency risk in the classroom in case of fire. So she had, and she's a very cool lady. I'm doing very brief overview of their stories, but if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend that you watch either the Lives Worth Living documentary that covers the entire disability rights movement, or another fun, I shouldn't say fun, it is fun. There's a documentary that came out on Netflix called Crip Camp, and it just details a fun story from the perspective of disability rights activists and their first experience being independent. So, okay, so what is independent living? It is not a nursing home or care center. A lot of people get this confused with when we say independent living center, they envision some kind of residential facility. And they are not. So they are service centers where individuals can go to learn as much autonomy as possible. And the goal is to keep people in the setting of their choosing. And a little bit more independent living philosophy continued is that people with disabilities are the experts on their own needs. I can't come in and tell you what the best way to do something is because that's not my experience. So it's giving power back to the person with the lived experience to choose for themselves. And a big part that I like to train when we get new people in independent living, this is a hard one for a lot of us, especially in Utah, to unlearn, and that is to give the dignity to fail. So I have the opportunity every day to get up and make mistakes and to maybe make poor choices. That's a human right, and that extends to individuals with disabilities. We like to think about protecting people with disabilities, mitigating risk for them, but that is not how you empower them to have self-sufficiency. Okay, so there are 6 independent living centers across the state of Utah. And I put my map on here. It is kind of hard to see, I apologize, but I can send a copy of this to Mindy and she can share afterwards if people are interested in learning. So our centers cover every part of the state, including very rural areas. And we just got back from our yearly independent living conference, which includes all of the independent living center staff, myself, and our DSE. So there are our DWS representatives, and we all just learn together and discover the ways that we can better serve our consumers in these areas. The 5 core services of independent living are information and referral. So I like to say that independent living is a bit of a catch-all for services for people with disabilities. If they don't know where to go for things, an independent living center is actually a good place to start. They keep information on a lot of community connections for people, like housing in the area. They can help with Social Security applications and things like that. Just ways to help individuals live their life as independently as possible. Obviously independent living skills. So this can be this can be really random. So in my years as a youth program assistant, I worked with so many youth on the most random of goals that they had. I did basketball practice with one of my youth, and we would just shoot baskets. We'd try and practice on how to get better at it so that he could not be embarrassed in PE class. So he just random anything that individuals want to learn. Obviously, that was just like a recreational skill, but I've done mock interviews with people to practice. We've done cooking classes. If someone has a specific thing they want to cook, we've even done one-on-one. But unfortunately, I don't get to provide direct services anymore. Makes me sad because that was my favorite thing. But I get to participate more now in the advocacy piece. So the USILC and independent living centers are focused on advocating. So what that can mean is teaching self-advocacy, so helping individuals find ways that they can stand up for themselves, because that's how you build self-confidence, is by doing for yourself. And then peer support is a big piece of independent living. So we saw that centers were established by individuals with disabilities. So we have a really cool requirement in independent living, and that is that 51% or a majority of all staff and leadership have to be individuals with disabilities. And that's in an effort to keep things peer focused and peer led. And then the 5th core service, which is our newest, is transition, and that encompasses youth as well as individuals in care facilities if they choose to transition out of basically any next step. Other services provided by independent living centers, obviously peer mentoring. So we can connect individuals with peers that have similar or same life experiences so that nobody feels alone in what they're going through. It's best to learn from someone who's been there and done that, so they can give you tips and tricks and just ultimately help people thrive. Housing help is a big one that independent living centers can provide. When I was a coordinator, I kept a list of housing that accepted the Section 8 vouchers. So if individuals were looking for the subsidized housing options, I had an actual list of places and people they could call directly to get situated with housing that was accessible and safe. Assistive technology. So this is obviously, it's not a core service, but it is a big thing that independent living helps with. It's the only program in independent living that individuals have to financially qualify for. So all of these services are free except for assistive technology, and this is in an effort to help people stay in their homes or the setting of their choosing. If it just needs to have a slight modification or a piece of equipment for them to safely stay there, then this is the program that they would take part in. And then another one that's really cool that is open for the community is most centers have an equipment loan bank. So you can temporarily borrow out, it sounded wrong, equipment to use at home. So a lot of it, we get like shower chairs, walkers for temporarily, canes, anything really you can think of. Even some centers keep hospital beds. I don't know which ones do still, because they are kind of hard to store and to transfer between people, but it is an option. And it is free to use. They do, if you so choose to utilize it, they do accept donations to help keep those programs going and to keep equipment updated. And then there's also recreation or community integration. And these are group outings that either take place at the center or in the community. So going and making sure that individuals with disabilities are seen in the community and part of, and also get opportunities to interact with peers and have a little bit of fun in the learning. And then obviously nursing, home transition, and diversion. Okay, so what is USILC? Every state has an independent living council. So in addition to being a federally mandated entity, the statewide independent living council is governor appointed. And it consists of a pure majority, like I said, that 51% of individuals with disabilities. So one kind of caveat of that is if independent living center staff wanted to be a part of the council, they couldn't count as a person with a disability under our federal rules. But we have a great variety of individuals supporting the council and the efforts of independent living in the state. I think I know Eduardo is here and Kelly I saw are on the council currently. And we have representatives from various community groups as well as individuals or self-advocates with disabilities who participate and provide support, feedback, and guidance for center staff. So we have a very small staff at USILC. It's just myself and my coworker JC, who is the program coordinator. So if you don't see us out a lot, it's because there's only 2 of us and we're doing the best we can. But we rely on our council members to kind of be that extension of us on these community councils and to bring that information back to us so that we are making sure that services are staying consumer focused. And the big piece of that is obviously informing decisions about disability issues statewide. So I live in the Pleasant View area, so North Ogden. So I get a small piece and see what this community needs, which is why that statewide representation is important. I don't know what the realities are of living in St. George or in Price. So we make sure to keep a wide variety of individuals to inform the disability network. Okay, members can serve a term of 3 years and they can serve 2 consecutive terms. And that's, so let's see. So this isn't, it's kind of a long service, but it's in an effort to keep passionate people involved in the work that we're doing. And to also keep it revolving so new ideas can come about. So purposes of the SILC. The biggest job of a statewide independent living council is to develop and expand independent living programs and philosophy on a statewide basis. So I say statewide because, like I mentioned before, each area of the state has a little bit different needs, and they do work together quite well. But it's just nice to have access to a statewide representative to make sure that it's kind of fair across the board. So this work involves writing, developing, and monitoring the state plan for independent living, and to survey the public for needs and compile and submit reports for all of the centers across the state, and then represent disability on community councils. So we're involved in various different disability groups as the independent living voice, and then obviously to advocate for independent living. So we have the opportunity every year to go to a conference that's held in Washington, D.C., where we do education, not lobbying, education of our congressmen and women to make sure that they're remembering the disability community when they're making their big decisions. Okay, we do have a couple membership requirements on our independent living council. So obviously I mentioned before the pure majority. One ex officio or non-voting member usually is the representative from our state agency, which is Department of Workforce Services. And then we're lucky in the state of Utah that our network works together very well. Everyone has, we just collaborate well. So every year, a center director takes a 1-year term, and they take turns on the council so that they can represent the voice of the independent living centers. And then we keep 2 members on staff with a 2 members on the council with financial management experience, and that is to help me monitor and oversee our budget. I do not have a background in finance, so I rely a lot on these individuals to help me stay correct on my budget. And then we have a size limitation, which is no more than 15 voting members, and then 22 of maximum. And for our state size, 10 has been established as our minimum. Okay, let's dive in a little bit to the state plan for independent living. So the state plan runs on a 3-year cycle, and basically it outlines what services the network is going to provide for people with disabilities in Utah. So the next one isn't due until June of 2027, and it is written in collaboration with all 6 centers, our designated state entity, and our council. I will add in community information as well. So we send a survey out to all of our network and disability collaborations to get information relevant for that coming state plan. And I'll show you the summary of it. Don't feel like you have to read through these, because I'm going to go through and break down each of these goals. But this is a 32-page document that we submit and write out and hash out for weeks and weeks. And then when it's done, I can put it into this lovely table that is easier to digest for the masses. Okay, goal number 1. And we like to keep these along what our federal requirements are. So there are a couple of things you'll notice sound like repeats, but it's important for us to stay within our rules as far as services provided. So goal number 1 is that people with disabilities receive effective and quality independent living services, leading to greater independence. So objective 1.1 is that each year the 6 centers will serve 20% new individuals. They do a great job of this. There's always new people discovering independent living and getting services at centers. Objective 1.2 is to provide services statewide to help people with significant disabilities reach their independent living goals. That one's pretty self-explanatory. All right, goal number 2. Utahns are more aware of disability issues and the value of full participation. So objective 2.1 is to increase disability awareness through outreach. Each center is in charge of doing outreach for their respective areas. And so you'll see them at like youth transition fairs, or I've seen a few like at medical offices, or just anywhere that you can find or that people would need to find services. Objective 2.2 is to help people with disabilities join in local community events. So that's that community integration piece. And it's important, like I said, because we want to make sure that people with disabilities are active members of our society. Objective 2.3, support better housing and transportation options. When I survey groups at each independent living center, this is the first thing that the consumers will raise their hand and tell me that they're struggling with. And especially in the state of Utah, our housing cost is quite high. And so we're seeing a lot of individuals who need a little bit of extra support in either being connected with housing or doing a little bit of advocacy work to find more places willing to either accept vouchers or lower their costs so that individuals on fixed incomes are able to be housed in our state. And transportation is always a big one as well, because we are a pretty rural state. Most parts of the state are pretty isolated. So in an effort to include individuals in those communities, independent living, a couple of the centers, actually, I think all of them, make an effort to provide limited transportation so individuals in those areas can receive services. Objective 2.4 is to raise awareness of mental health and how to access help. This is the newest goal in our state plan. Obviously, some of these will be revolving each year based on what our federal outlines are. So this mental health piece is one that, after collecting information from the public, this is what the consumers wanted. So the idea is that center staff keep information on hand for when someone comes in a mental health crisis. And that doesn't mean that we're mental health professionals and can provide therapy. The idea is that you know your community and what resources are available in it. And maybe even some training for staff on how to manage a situation where someone might be in crisis to the best of their ability. Okay, goal number 3 is my favorite because of my background in youth. But so youth with disabilities are active in their communities. Sounds pretty broad. But objective 3.1, so coordinate programs that help youth transition to adulthood. So I'm sure a few of you have heard of like the pre-ETS program, pre-employment transition services. Got it. So Independent living has always kind of been that. So that program fit really nicely under the umbrella of what we do. Basically, we're teaching skills, any skill that an individual might need to transition onto whatever is next, whether that is school or home life or a job. Those supports are in place at each center. Objective 3.2, keep a leadership committee to guide IL services. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on that, a little bit of detail on that in a moment. There it is. Objective 3.3, support youth leadership and advocacy training. Goal number 4 is that Utah public policy reflects the supports people with disabilities need. The objective under this goal is to teach advocacy skills and work with lawmakers to support independent living needs. Our advocacy training we do every year in January during the session, and it's a basics course. So a lot of individuals that I've worked with personally have mentioned that the legislative process is very intimidating and it doesn't feel like they could make a difference at all. So the objective from that class is just to empower individuals and give them the information so that they can be a part of that advocacy, because lawmakers don't care about what I have to say about what life is like in, for example, using a wheelchair. I'm not a wheelchair user. So it's important to have individuals who are experiencing these different life experiences. That sounded awful. With different disabilities to give a firsthand account of what it's like. Okay, so this is kind of going back under that goal number 3. So USILC, in partnership with the 6 independent living centers, every summer holds a leadership conference for youth with disabilities across the state. So it's not just a summer camp. We make these guys work. They have to apply, and it's a supported college experience. So they get an opportunity to see what it would be like if they chose to do college after high school. So we do classes in the college classroom, and they eat on campus and they stay in the dorms, and they learn about independent living history and philosophy, as well as other skills that will help them be leaders. And attendees must be active in independent living skills training. So that just means they need to be connected with an independent living center or be willing to be connected to be eligible to attend. But they do have to apply, and we do interview them so that we can keep our group kind of small so that it's effective in the training that we can provide. Another piece of that goal is to maintain a leadership committee. So this is the logo that our youth leadership committee has designed themselves. They're representatives from each center under the age of 30. A lot of times they are Ninja alumni, and the ones who are interested in keeping those leadership skills up to snuff and practicing them. They meet quarterly and discuss disability issues that are facing youth in Utah. And they inform the council of what they learn with a representative as a full council member. So we have a youth member on our council that shares an update every meeting, if they'd had a meeting, of what they've been working on. Okay, that's everything. This is a QR code to our state plan survey. So we are in our this year we're doing some monitoring. So if you so choose, you are welcome to take our survey and let us know information based on your experience in the disability community. And these are my contact details. you decide, we are on Facebook and Instagram under USILC. But yeah, that's everything that I have for you today.
Wonderful, Tylee. Thank you very much for a great presentation. A lot of information that you share and a lot of insights that we need to reflect and digest. So it is open for any questions that you might have. Now is the opportunity.
Yeah, now I can see you all. Yes, Holly.
I was going to try to wait, but I'm going to jump in. I jump in all the time. But so the your youth program is fantastic. Do you work with DCFS also for maybe foster kids that are transitioning out of foster that have disabilities? And if you do,
I think that absolutely counts as a transition. And I think there are centers who do support programs like that. It's open to anybody. So anyone that wants to use the service, you don't even have to like prove that you have a disability. It's self-proclaimed. So if there are those youth who need services and supports, they can always reach out to a center in their area.
that's great to know. So you don't, your disability doesn't need to be documented through VR or anything. It's
Nope. The only time when we even would ask for information like that would be if we're writing a justification specifically for any assistive technology. So like we say any functional limitations that this piece of equipment is going to help them overcome. So yeah, it's all self-report. So
fantastic. That's amazing.
Any other question? I would like to ask, taking advantage that you are here, Tylee, that what do you think are some of the current challenges that the Utah State Independent Living Council have now?
That's a good question. I think a lot of them right now, it's difficult. I mean, always we have like employment struggles with our youth, just learning the soft skills to keep jobs. But I would say from the ones that I know, a lot of them have a goal to learn how to drive. So having either access to a vehicle to practice in or someone who's willing to practice with them has been a big challenge. Or if you have any need of hand controls or a specialized vehicle to learn how, they're very hard to find. So that's one that's pretty big. Their whole goal in life is just to not need anybody. Like they just want to go drive off into the sunset and do whatever they want whenever they want. So that's what they would tell you if they were in this room. And then another one is it's relationships. So like dating wise, it is rough out there. I don't think I could go back to it. But our youth have talked about that a little bit. It's hard to find people who are like-minded or who are I don't know, like understanding of their disability and just being able to share that part of themselves with a partner in like not being afraid that they're going to be judged or bypassed because of it. So that's a couple of the things that we've been working with our group on.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hmm.
They're my people. I'm always excited to talk about them. I self-identify as a youth, even though I am not anymore under that definition.
Are there any programs that you know of to connect the youth, especially the transitioning youth, that age group, with each other, especially from other parts of the state too?
Yeah, so as far as like if they're looking at higher education, there's a few, I'm sure you've heard from the Aggies Elevated program before, but they have extensions. So there's one at USU Eastern. It used to be called Eagles Elevated, but they wanted to keep it Aggies, so they're still Aggies Elevated Eastern. So there's that program, and then obviously Aggies Elevated at the main campus. And then Jennifer, did you have a comment/question on that?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you. I was just going to wait until you rambled off the list, but I was just going to mention Park up in Clearfield is who I work with. We have a very strong, not only pre-ETS program, but a youth transition specialist. So we work from ages 14 to 24, all the way up from Box Elder County to Salt Lake County. So
That's awesome. So this is
and
the
you
right
don't have to go
room.
through VR to do it either. You could just
You can just go right to you guys. What is your program, Jennifer?
Yep.
Sorry, I missed the title of your program.
Park in Clearfield is spelled PARC. Stands for
Okay.
Pioneer Adult Recreation. I'm not Rehabilitation Center. I know
Awesome.
it's an old acronym from the 1970s, and we never changed the name because obviously we serve youth now. So
I love it. Cool. Thanks for sharing. And then there's also the BYU has an extension program as well as UVU. They're Wolverines Elevated. So hopefully we see more programs like that pop up for students interested in higher education. It's the groups that I've had contact with are individuals who have attended those programs. They've had a great experience, and there's a few graduates as well, one of which served on our council until she went off and got a job and was too busy to help us. But what a great problem to have. Any other questions about independent living, any of those things? Oh, now I can see the chat. That helps me. Look at that. That's awesome.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to kind of share that. So I've been on the Statewide Independent Living Council for several years now, and it's a really, really good experience. If you haven't had that opportunity yet, I know we've kind of just voted in some new members, but I think Tylee's always keeping her eye out for individuals who might have an interest. So if you yourself or if you know somebody who is maybe an individual that is wanting to get some experience in advocacy or even just make some connections or gain the experience of serving on a board, connect with Tylee, and it might not be something that happens right away, but I think we are always kind of just keeping an eye out for new people, because there's so many people in the state of Utah that would be a good fit, but we don't always know them or have those connections. And sometimes I feel like we've kind of tapped out all of our network, so we're always looking for new people that might bring a meaningful connection into the council. for a future time.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. So Kelly is our council chair as of this last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. Does that feel right? Anyway,
Yeah.
so thank you for remembering to share the "we do recruit" message. So yes, if you ever feel like you want to be a part of the council, we only meet 4 times a year, and we have one training in the month of November. So it's not a huge time commitment, but it is important work, and we value your feedback. So Jennifer's signed me up. Okay, I'm gonna remember, Jennifer. And I'll reach out when it's recruitment time, because like I said, we're always looking for great community members and professionals and people with disabilities to further the work that we're doing. So I appreciate you. I'm writing these names down as you're reaching out to me, just so as you know. And I might have to ask Eduardo for your contact details.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other question? Any other comment? At once or two? And 3. Well, Tylee, again, thank you very much for sharing your time, your knowledge, and your passion about this field. I know that it is very complex, and having those opportunities to learn from each other and from the leaders in the field help us to expand the conversations and help us to progress in at all the times. Appreciate again, and if there is anything else, maybe Mindy or Holly, that you want to end.
Sorry, I tried to get on here and say that I was going to send out some questions, and then my Zoom freaked out. Sorry about that. But I just sent out a quiz poll thing to everyone who's still in the meeting. Please fill that out for us. That helps us know if we're doing a good job with these community of practice meetings. And I just want to say thank you to Tylee for this. I learned so much. I thought I was kind of knowledgeable about the things, and I learned so much today. One other thing I wanted to share too is if anybody is on X or Twitter anymore, I did do some live tweets of this meeting today, so you can check those out as well. And yeah, just watch for more upcoming events from us and more products coming. We'll be sharing those in our newsletter and on our website. So yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.